Welcome back to Zero Sum Gaming here at the Culture Cache. Something really weird is going on here. I don't quite feel like myself today. Oh well, that's not a good enough reason to keep me from bringing you my latest content. Even if YouTube goes down, I'll send you this one by Boney Express. This was a donor request by Harrison Young. He wants to get my take on Undertale, the internet's favorite video game ever, so let's get to it. First of all, this is a game best played blind. Thankfully, I was able to mostly do that myself. I won't be intentionally spoiling anything in this video, but every little tidbit really does matter, so if you haven't beaten the game yet, consider pausing this video, playing through the game on your own, and then resuming it later. Continue at your own risk. Actually, I wasn't joking when I said you can pause this video and then play through the game. It's really not very long. 10 to 12 hours is honestly enough time for a playthrough. On the one hand, that's really short for an RPG. But on the other hand, this is the kind of game you won't play through only once either. There are 3 base endings, but 2 of them have multiple variations of said endings. Your actions matter. It's a practical application of the butterfly effect. That's not exactly the butterfly effect I had in mind, but it's a good movie in its own right. Check it out sometime. Anyway, when the butterfly flaps its wings, does it inadvertently create a hurricane later? This life-affirming concept actually has its roots in chaos theory. Here's another way to think about it. Suppose a sharpshooter takes aim at a target a mile away. The tiniest difference in trajectory from his point of aim will become a change of feet from the target. Now imagine the same sharpshooter drawing a bead on a target on Neptune. Every choice you make, big or small, matters. You might not notice it at first, but over time, your decisions have long-lasting effects. The most prominent of these choices is how you resolve combat. If you kill a character, then it is dead. Period. This sounds like common sense, but in the world of video games, and especially RPGs, dead usually means anything but dead. Let's say you just can't stand Undine. When you fight her, if you kill her, you won't see her ever again. She will have returned to the dust from whence she came. Suppose you instead find a peaceable solution. Then you can interact with her again later. You may even find a way to befriend her. Notice the 3 separate outcomes possible. Now realize that she's only one character and that you have the ability to kill, or not to kill, every living thing in the game. And this doesn't stop with only named characters. Your RPG instincts tell you to kill everything in sight to amass money and experience. Well, you can do that. But the seemingly random encounters aren't quite as random as you think. As you kill off nameless generic enemies, you may notice how it affects the population of towns. Yup, you've been killing the townsfolk, but there's a good chance you won't even notice it at first. It's even possible to completely eradicate a town by killing every single enemy in every random encounter. They're fixed, and they do eventually run out. I earlier called the butterfly effect life-affirming, but depending on your actions, maybe death-affirming would have been more accurate. To get the most out of this game, you need to be intimately familiar with the RPG genre, but not because it will help you play this game. If anything, the game will use your prior knowledge against you at every turn. There are countless in-jokes, even as this game completely defies the genre. In fact, I'm not totally sold on even labeling the game as an RPG. It's true that you're playing the role of Frisk, but by that definition, Super Mario Bros. Is an RPG because you're playing the role of Mario. The actual gameplay is an interesting hybrid of Super Mario RPG's semi-active battles and bullet hell shoot-'em-up games. Yup, I'll bet you haven't seen a game like this one before. Whenever you're attacked, you're represented by a red heart. You have to maneuver yourself around the battle box, which can vary in size, and avoid your opponent's attacks manually. It's 100% hands-on, and it can get pretty intense at times. Better yet, the gameplay perfectly matches the narrative. Early on, Toriel doesn't want to fight you. In combat, she actually steers her attacks away from you. There's also a spoilerific battle where your enemy gets continuously weaker. Each turn, his attacks actually get easier to dodge, proving what the text says through gameplay. I love when games do that. On your turn, you use this heart to select menu options. Even these options set the game apart. You have the standard fair fight option. Choosing this will bring up a large oval. You want to time your blows such that when the line sweeps across the oval, it lands as close to the center as possible. Then there's Act. This is unique to each enemy. You can always check, which works like analyze, scan, etc. in your typical RPGs. But that's where the similarities end. These commands range from insult to flirt, from hug to heel turn, and a wide array of other humorous options. It's often worth it to try out each one because the results are often hilarious. Another RPG standard is item. If you don't read the item descriptions, you're missing out on part of the fun. Most of these are typical healing consumables, but there are some others. For example, your initially equipped weapon is a stick.
Suppose he's got a pointed stick. Shut up!
If you unequip it, you can use it as an item during combat. This is mostly ineffective, but if you try it against any dog-type enemy, you'll start a game of fetch with the dog, leading to an easy victory. Finally, you have the mercy option. You're likely already familiar with the run command. Yup, the Brave Sir Robin approach. Run away! Run away! But what about that spare choice? This is a large part of the uniqueness of Undertale. You can literally refuse to fight. In fact, that's kind of the idea. But simply refusing to fight is rarely enough. You often have to use this in conjunction with your act commands to pacify monsters without harming them, or sometimes only lightly harming them. You'll want to pay attention to the narration during combat. Not only is it riotously funny, but it also provides not so subtle clues as to how to end the fights without killing your foes. The humor really does make the game. It's my single favorite aspect of Undertale. It's unique, quirky, offbeat, and it's sure to tickle your funny bone. Uh-oh. Is this change going to become permanent? I'm not going to be stuck making terrible skeleton jokes, am I? Let's hope I'm cured by my next video. Anyway, the humor helps breathe life into the game, and the whole thing would have fallen flat without it. Similarly, all named characters are very well developed. They're multifaceted, and each exhibits a truly unique personality. Even better, there's just enough to the characters to let you get to know them while retaining a healthy dose of mystery throughout. My favorite is Mettaton. He's rather humorous! Sorry. I was laughing the entire time he was on the screen, and his character arc was actually quite surprising. And the opera scene was simply amazing, especially if you're familiar with the source material. The graphics are highly stylized. Some people gripe because they're not state-of-the-art, but I don't mind. I'm sure you've noticed over the better part of a year now that I greatly prefer the 8 and 16-bit eras. Even aside from that though, the look of this game is not only characteristic, but it also helps to future-proof it a bit. It's not like the game's going to look any worse as it ages. Besides, having to use the clues you're given to really get to know the characters is a part of the fun. Sans and Papyrus, in particular, would likely have ventured into the uncanny valley if they were fleshed out with photorealistic graphics, and Flowey, frankly, really wouldn't have worked at all if he actually looked like a real-life flower. You've probably noticed by now that I'm a sucker for soundtracks. I'll be honest, when this request came in, I went to Steam to purchase the game, and without hesitation, I also picked up the soundtrack. And I'm glad I did. Like the writing and the visuals, it marches to the beat of its own drum, and that's a good thing. And believe it or not, but the titles of some of the tracks actually help to develop the characters a tiny bit. When you fight Toriel, the track that plays is called Heartache. This scene is fine without it, but that extra little detail in the title of the music really does prove itself and the scene as a whole. and it even fits all possible outcomes of the fight, almost as if Toriel can see right through you. Okay, brace yourselves, Undertale fans. I know you don't want to hear this, but the game does have some flaws. I've got a bone to pick with a few aspects of this game. You'll notice pretty quickly that the game could have used a proofreader. There are many grammatical errors in the game. It's certainly not the end of the world, but it's noticeable. Granted, there's plenty of English in some of the other games I've covered, and not even every game I've discussed is even in English for that matter. Still, the popularity of this game normalizes that bad grammar, and as a teacher, I can't help but point it out. Another, much more significant problem with the game is the complete lack of subtlety in the message. For God's sake, the tagline of the game is, the RPG where you don't have to destroy anyone. And believe it or not, the game only proceeds to get less subtle from there. Let me be clear, I did enjoy this game, but the heavy-handed delivery got under my skin quickly. And that's saying something, since I don't even have skin at the moment. The Metal Gear series was once subtle with a similar message. Avoid killing when you can, but you still have the option of lethal force if necessary. But that series, too, has given up clever writing and gameplay in favor of the same ham-fisted approach.
Your lyrics lack subtlety. You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
For that matter, I'm not even sure I agree with the message. Don't get me wrong, I am an advocate of peace over power. Years of martial arts training has seen to that. But at the same time, if I get attacked, I'll be the one going home at the end of the night. Period. I'm pretty easy to get along with, but if anyone else escalates to violence, I refuse to be a victim. Thankfully, the game does briefly pull back from this, saying the pacifist lifestyle really doesn't work in the human world, but it's only a few lines of easily missed text in one of multiple endings. I also really don't care for Toriel. Sacrilegious, I know. She's perfectly fine if you treat her only as the tutorial, but the way she tries to cloister you in the extremely claustrophobic ruins is just too much for me. She's the perfect spokesgoat woman for the safe spaces currently plaguing both virtual and real spaces across America today. And this isn't really the game's fault, but it still needs mentioning. If you bring up the very real and very valid concerns, fans of this game will often respond with something along the lines of, well, maybe you shouldn't play Undertale. The nannying tone of the game has morphed into a nannying tone of much of the fan base. Who are you to tell me what games I can and can't play? Anita Sarkeesian, was that you? And some of them even get vitriolic when you have anything critical to say about this game. Did they somehow miss the message? Just Google Undertale fandom for a sampling of what I'm talking about. Just be careful with the image searches on this one. You can't unsee them, and you have been warned. Still, don't let these reprobates turn you off from a genuinely fun experience. And yes, this is a video game you don't simply play, you experience it. So, is Undertale worth it? While it is very short, you're going to want to play through it multiple times, and different paths through the game actually do flesh out the story in different ways. It's only $10, and while it's a good deal at that price, you'll want to go ahead and get the bundle with the soundtrack for $18. It's quite a bargain, and you really will want to go through the game yourself so you can see what all the hype is about. The finale in particular is amazing, and you need to see it firsthand. For that matter, Steam has pretty regular sales, so you may be able to score this one for even less than that. Thanks for watching.